Welcome to the first ever episode of Fucking Underrated, FU for short. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll be looking at movie things that are underrated. That was a song from the soundtrack of Nocturnal Animals, which we'll be looking at today, but specifically Amy Adams in Nocturnal Animals. So, as you may remember, that was a year that Amy Adams did Nocturnal Animals by Tom Ford and also Arrival by Denis Villeneuve. And didn't get an Oscar nomination for either. So, good job to the Oscars. But they're obviously hugely underrated. She's just underrated as an actress, I feel, because she doesn't have an Oscar. I mean, we all know she's probably one of the greatest actresses of her generation. But, show me the gold. So specifically, let's look at this character, Susan Morrow, that she plays. So just a little bit on Nocturnal Animals. Essentially what happens is this Susan lady, she's a quite an upscale art gallery owner person. And she gets a book delivered to her called Nocturnal Animals. So not the most subtle. From her ex-husband, Edward, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who is also a brilliant and, I think, underrated actor. And the moment she gets like a paper cut, which I saw some videos said that, the moment she opens it, it draws blood. So again, not very subtle, but, it's there's a lot of metaphor like this in the movie. Anyways, and then the movie unfolds. It is concurrently the story of what's happening in the novel, which is a massive metaphor, and then her reaction and backflash, and then the story that's happening in real life. So why do we love Nocturnal Animals? I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think I don't know, from the interviews that I watched, I think Tom Ford takes himself kind of really seriously, which is totally fine because has like $1 billion fashion brand. But he's always talked about how he's like a really commercial designer, and so I think he really wants his film and to be some sort of art that lives in the pantheon of the great arts. And I don't know, what I loved about Nocturnal Animals was not that at all. It was really her character and what an interesting and intricate portrait of a flawed person it is, and she just happens to be a woman. And and I love her characters. She just resonates with me so much. So I think let's just get into it. There's no editing. We're gonna 1917 this, although that makes no sense because that movie was really well edited. But what's gonna happen is I will watch certain clips and you get to listen to it. And then we get to talk about it. So this first clip is a conversation about halfway through the movie between Amy Adams and this intern, this person who works for her. And it's let's get going.
You didn't sleep again, did you?
You know me. I never sleep. My ex-husband used to call me a nocturnal animal.
What? Ex-husband? I didn't know you had an ex-husband. Since when?
A couple of years in graduate school. It's weird, I've been thinking about him a lot lately, and then recently he sent me this book that he's written, and it's violent and it's sad, and he titled it Nocturnal Animals, and he dedicated it to me.
Did you love him?
Yeah, I loved him. He was a writer, and I didn't have faith in him. I panicked and I did something horrible to him, something unforgivable. Really.
You left him?
I left him. I left him in a brutal way.
So that clip is actually the most important line I couldn't find. It's actually it's the first line of the trailer, so yeah, subtlety is not a thing for this movie. But I'll read the the scene to you, because I'm essentially, Amy Adams and I, same person. Neither of us have an Oscar. So, so it's on page 60. Script. So essentially what's happened is, it is a new day, literally, and the night before, Susan was reading the book, and now she's in her office. So internal, Morrow gallery, Susan's office, next morning. So that's what's next morning. This is the script. So Susan is sitting at her desk going through emails. Susan's assistant, Alex, 26, tall and stunning, enters the room. Watch the movie if you want to see what she looks like. It's very visually interesting. So blah, blah, blah. This conversation happens. Okay, so the last line that we heard was, I left him in a brutal way for the handsome and dashing Hutton, who's played by Armie Hammer, which we would know is Oliver from Call Me By Your Name. And he also played the twins in the Social Network. Okay, so the next line is, sorry, that's what Susan said, and Alex would say, who is indeed very handsome and dashing. Susan replies with, yes. Do you ever feel like your life has turned into something that you never intended? She looks at her and pauses for a moment. So at this point, Alex looks completely lost because that just doesn't resonate with her at all. Susan continues, no, of course you don't. You just started living your life. She looks closely at Susan, and then Alex says, you really didn't get any sleep, did you? And Susan says, no. So yeah, the nocturnal animal thing, they like really touch on it a lot throughout the movie. But we can go into that later. So the most interesting thing is, firstly, what I love about Amy Adams is that her diction and the way she kind of like, the cadence to the way she speaks, she actually embodies someone who's jaded. A lot of us talk about how jaded we are, but I think she really like came off as very jaded. And the first time that I watched this, when I was younger and more beautiful, I really thought, gosh, like, I can really grow up to be like her, which is great and at the same time so awful. And like, why it's great is she has attained a certain level of success, right? She really cares about that, and like, again, it's not subtle about that. There are clues that like her career is sort of going downhill, the gallery is not doing as well, and literally there's a scene where she goes up 2 steps of stairs, and they edited it in so you see that she's going up 2 steps of stairs to this board meeting in the gallery, which again is not subtle, but it's really clear in that she's not where she used to be, at the beginning, where there's, I guess, a greater sense of hope, because you don't really know, like, the possibilities are endless, right? To infinity and beyond, and then, she's, at a certain place, but not necessarily where she wants to be, but there's a sense that she has peaked, which for me is so scary, because, like, that completely is, I feel like that all the time. Like, what was all this work for? In her case specifically, she's really lamenting the decision to leave her ex-husband, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And, she thought that it's going to take her life to a certain place by making that decision, but it didn't. Anyways, let's watch